finally, part 2 of the 1200 XL from Italy video. Yes, it's been, how long has it been now? A month? Yeah, well, I've been kind of busy, but here it is. You may remember it from last time, and I also used this computer in a standalone video to show you how to install Ultimate 1MB in a 1200 XL. So we're going to finish this machine now, finally. It still looks decent. Although I'm not 100% sure how long the effects of the restoration will last, but hopefully a long time. But anyway, we're going to get this thing finished. It's going to have UAV installed, which is the Atari, the ultimate Atari video upgrade to give it great video. It's already got Ultimate 1MB. It's got a side cartridge to go in, which we're going to have to file down so it'll go into the cartridge tunnel. And then we will unveil the finished machine and compare it with what actually arrived and see what it looks like. So let's get on with it. Alright, here we are with the 1200 XL, which we've previously installed Ultimate 1MB into. You can watch the previous video if you want to see how that was done. Now the next thing we need to install is UAV, and when we've done that, basically the machine is going to be ready to reassemble, although I'll have to take a look at the keyboard as well on this one, as we usually have to do with 1200 XLs. I have a new toy as well. I've had to rearrange the desk here. You can see that I've got all the soldering equipment up this side of the desk now, which is better because it means the desoldering gun actually sits properly in the holder now, which it didn't before. That requires the wires to hang like that. So if we look over to this side here, we can see we have an oscilloscope finally, which I bought from a chap called Gary on eBay, and an absolute bargain price. And he actually used the scope for some Amiga projects, and he sent me a very nice message through eBay after I bought this, and it was an absolute steal, and it's been very well looked after. It still had the protective film on the LCD. It's a low-end, very low-end entry-level oscilloscope, but I've never had an oscilloscope before. I've managed to get by without one until now, but this was such a bargain, and since I'm trying to improve my success rate with difficult repairs and diversify even into different platforms, I figured it was time to get one. So thank you very much to Gary for providing that, and thank you for following up with a nice message and good after-sales service. He says if I have any problems at all, to get in touch, and I don't expect to have any problems at all with this because it's in perfect condition. So let's get back to our 1200 XL. We're going to have to put this UAV together because it is a basic board. So I asked the owner to buy the what they call the basic UAV that basically doesn't have any of the connectors on it, because I don't like the terminal block when I install these things. The terminal block actually covers up the connection labels on the silk screen, which is just one of the reasons I don't like it. I prefer to use DuPont connectors, right angle DuPont connectors on here. And what I forgot of course is that it hasn't got the jumper block on the top either, so I'll probably just hardwire the jumpers on there, and of course I've got some legs to put on the underside, so it's just going to save me basically desoldering anything on here. Right, so I want to put a nice socket under here, under CD4050. Yes, I know it's already got a socket under it, but it's not a nice socket, so I'm going to replace it, because that's the kind of calibre of work we're doing here. So we will pop the desoldering gun on in its new location. That's all very exciting stuff. Now, meanwhile, while that's warming up, we'll have a look at the manual here, which just seems to get thicker every time. We're now, where are we now? Page 56, wow. Where's the 1200 XL part? Jumper settings, 4. Right, must be there. 4. Yes! Yes he has. Right, there we go. So that's what we basically need. Initially, we'll add some more solder to our CD4050. Okay, so that's now got a mixture of lead and lead-free solder in it. That looks good. Okay, now that should just pop back into the cradle without any problems at all. Hopefully. Get in. That's it. Let's make sure all these are free of the vias. I take this out. Give a little bit of heat just to help it. That's it, out. I'll just clean it up a little bit with a little bit of wick. And yes, that looks very nice indeed. Right, pop this in here. Alright, so that's the socket in place. The UAV is going to go in here. Which way around does it go again? It goes that way. So we need to put some socket legs on here. But I think what we should do first is the jumpers. Okay, so I'll just take this wire and we will just connect the jumpers using that. Make little U-shaped bits of wire. Okay. There we are, one permanently jumpered for 1200 XL UAV. So now let's put our little legs on the bottom. Now what we can do here to ensure a good fit is to actually pop this into the socket on the board, and then we just solder it from the top side, and then we can be sure that the legs are dead straight. Push this in carefully so that they don't wreck the legs. So they're sitting on there. So all I've got to do now is get it level and tap the corner pins, and then we'll have a perfectly aligned two perfectly aligned rows of legs. So that's that one done. That's going to hold that perfectly nicely. There we go, so that's all the legs done. Perfectly aligned rows of legs. So what we're going to do next is just put some male right angle pins on there, and then the board's basically ready to go in. We just need to make some female DuPont connectors, and then we'll be good. So there's our completed, customized basic UAV board with all the fittings on it ready to go in. So now I just need the wires that go from here to the motherboard. So the great thing about this method is that with these header pins we can still read the silk screen underneath there, which is kind of useful. Now that's clear as mud. I think we better hop onto the internet to see what this actually entails. 3 days later. So there's a helpful link in the UAV manual which takes you to this website here, tcervo.com, and this actually gives you a guide on how to put the UAV into the 1200 XL. So it does give you the jumper positions here if for the 1200 XL and the 1400 XL, if you're lucky enough to have the latter. And if we go down a little bit further, he shows you where to put the composite video and Luma outputs. Lift those inductors there, L1 and L3. I just took them off completely. Likewise, further down here we've got a couple of capacitors to ground on the same signals. They should be taken off. He just lifted them up there, that's fine. He's got an extra ground connection here, which I found to make no difference whatsoever, and I'll get to this in a minute when I actually show you the finished product, the output of the UAV. But that I found that to make no difference whatsoever whether that ground wire is on or off, because the ground pins on the UAV, I find them to have direct continuity to ground on the CD4050 socket anyway. And then we've got our chroma wire. I didn't put it through to the back side of the board, I just took it straight to the top side of the socket just to save basically feeding the wire through the motherboard. It's entirely up to you what you do there, and there is the result. So this is what I did. So if we go back over to the desk, I'll put a link to this in the description, of course. Right, so if we go back over to the desk here and the motherboard, I've done quite a lot of work off camera on this board. My God, it'll all become apparent why I did and why there was a 3-day delay between me actually putting the UAV in and getting the thing finished. But anyway, so here's the UAV that we modified or finished fitting out. So that's sitting in the nice precision socket. There's our chroma colour input wire rather, and there's the 3 wires snaking off, and they go under here, and they end up as per the instructions that you saw there. There's your composite video Luma output, and there is our chroma wire. So that basically works. Right, so let's switch the machine on. Now we've got a picture, and it's rather difficult to convey this on camera. I'm going to try and get this across. Right, now if we have a look, if we get focused in, this is the output of the UAV here. That's just a keyboard randomly pressing because there's no keyboard plugged in. But hopefully you can see this slight effect here. There's a little bit of a jailbar effect going on, and this is actually on the Luma channel. It's not on the chroma. I noticed this before I even connected up the colour. It's not exactly overwhelming. Right, so if we zoom in here and I'll show you what the problems are. We've got these artifact areas here as well as sort of vertical bars. It doesn't look all that great. Not as nice as I would have expected with a UAV in the machine. You can see this sort of graining down the picture, and this, as I say, sort of artifacted effect, like a yellow mark down there. So I don't know what's causing that. I have attempted to play with the oscilloscope to try and see what's going on, to see if it was power related. The normal explanation would be that it was related to RAM refresh, DRAM refresh, which is normally the source of these jailbar effects. But I've never seen them so pronounced on a UAV machine before. And as I say, I've eliminated the idea that it could be a grounding issue, or by virtue of the fact that I haven't connected up that extra ground. It doesn't make any difference. So I'm interested to see if anybody has any suggestions about that. Slightly disappointing in a way, but I mean, the definition of the characters, the clarity of the picture is absolutely fine. So with UAV installed, the next major issue I found with this computer was getting the keyboard to work. You may remember from part 1 that the original keyboard was pretty much beyond saving from a cosmetic perspective. So we went for a spare keyboard. Now little did I realise that the spare keyboard, the mylar in the spare keyboard, although it had been fixed previously because of the common 1200XL perished adhesive problem, that fix had basically gone away, and I had run out of conductive silver paint, so I had to order some conductive silver paint to redo the fix on the keyboard. So I had to sit around and wait for that to turn up, which delayed things a bit, meant I couldn't finish this video for a start. But the conductive paint did turn up this morning, so I had the spare mylar in the keyboard, but I could not get that one to work at all. I think the I don't know why. Anyway, I don't know why. So I was swapping 2 mylars and 2 backplane PCBs from one to the other. I also suspected there was actually a break in the ribbon cable here. So I suspected that this ribbon cable connection was actually busted on the spare keyboard that used to be in one of my 1200XLs before I bought a new old stock keyboard. But that new old stock keyboard doesn't work either now, so I tried 3 different keyboards in this machine at one point just to do the basic tests, and none of them worked properly. I actually ended up pulling a stock 1200XL out of the cupboard and found that that keyboard did work, just to eliminate, to try and troubleshoot the whole situation. what I eventually ended up with, this is the original PCB from the original keyboard in this machine with the original Mylar, fixed with the conductive silver paint, but with the spare keyboard from my cupboard on top. I won't show you the top side yet, of course, because I want to do the unveil later on, but the keyboard, it took about 2 hours to get the keyboard to work in this thing, so it does finally work. So that was the keyboard fixed, so I could finally test the machine. So the next task was, of course, the SIDE3 cartridge, which is going to be used with this machine. Now, the SIDE3 cartridge, as you may or may not be aware, doesn't fit in the cartridge tunnel on the 1200 XL. So what I've done here is I've sanded down both sides of the casing with coarse sandpaper and then finer grit sandpaper, and then I polished it with auto sol to get it to a kind of a nice shiny finish, which I think looks pretty good. And it does, that slides into the cartridge tunnel, no problem, absolutely no extra force required to get that in. That's my card, actually. I should remove that. So that fits into the machine no problem now. So when I put this thing in and switched it on, it would randomly boot to the self-test. And also bearing in mind the Ultimate 1MB it's still at the moment has the original firmware on it. When the SIDE3 cartridge is plugged into the machine, I was getting what we call birdies in the Ultimate 1MB setup menu, which are little sort of white lines. It's interference in Antic fetching character data, and it looks very odd indeed, so we call them birdies. And as soon as I saw them, I thought, oh my god, no. Oh god! If I took the SIDE3 cartridge out, it was fine, no birdies at all. So to get rid of the birdies, what eventually worked was the Antic chip. I happened to have a spare NTSC Antic chip lying around, so I popped that in. Now, I had already tried replacing 74LS08 with 74F08, which is a slightly faster part. It didn't actually do any good, but when I changed the Antic chip for some miraculous reason, the birdies were all but gone while the SIDE3 cartridge was plugged in. Not quite, but all but gone. What made them go away completely was coupling a replacement Antic. It's just crazy. The things you got to do to get shit to work. Replacing the Antic and 74LS08, and then we got rid of the birdies. So now when I go into the setup menu, I don't see any problems whatsoever. But we still had the issue of the machine randomly going into the self-test when the cartridge was plugged in, when the SIDE3 cartridge was plugged in. Now, some of these sockets looked a little bit oxidized, some of the pins. I've actually replaced the CPU socket on this board. That didn't fix the problem. So I tried a SIDE2 cartridge, actually this SIDE2, just to make sure that I wasn't, you know, we didn't have an endemic issue with cartridges per se, and I was blaming the SIDE3. Well, it works fine with the SIDE2, no problem at all. So I told Sebastian about it, but whether the hell he reads it or he gives a shit one way or the other, I don't know. I had already applied a new FPGA update onto SIDE3, which is expressly designed to deal with timing issues. It didn't make a heap of the difference in this particular case, and we do need to release that update nevertheless. Of course, I wrote the flash, and I'm trying to find people who will test the thing when it's done, but I digress. Anyway, so I ended up at about 9 o'clock tonight with this board with a new Antic 74F08, and it was still 9 times out of 10 actually booting direct to the self-test when the SIDE3 cartridge was plugged in. So I replaced the CPU in this machine with just, I think it's an NCR. They're quite good NCRs, and if I turn the machine on now, it goes to the SIDE3 loader. I'm reluctant to actually see if that's repeatable. But anyway, it's better than it was. It's much better than it was. It does repeatedly manage to boot into the SIDE3 loader with this CPU. So all we had to do to get this machine to work with this SIDE3 cartridge was replace the CPU, the Antic chip and the 74LS08 and replace that with an F08 part. That's all we had to do. It's a plug and play solution if ever there was one. Alright, I think what we'll do now is we will update the firmware on this Ultimate 1MB. So we'll need to enable Sparta-DOS-X. That all looks fine. Now this machine is going to be used with SIDE3, so I'm going to put the brand new firmware on, which I should get released very, very soon. I know it's been quite a while now and I have kept saying that I will release it, but I'm glad I did in a way, because a couple of the clients on whose machines I did put the new firmware, one of them the other night actually reported a bug in the incognito variant, and I'm very thank you again to Gary for reporting that bug. That was a humdinger. That stopped disk images from showing up in the loader, so I fixed that. Hopefully that was the sleeper bug. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to upgrade this to the 3.10 firmware, just to get rid of the original flash content, and then we will you can see those Jailbars along the top. I'll be very interested if anybody can suggest any troubleshooting tips for that, but yeah, I'm going to flash the whole chip. I'm running it at 3 times SIO speed at the moment, just because I can't easily do divisor 0 at the moment, well, not conveniently anyway. So we're going to flash that, and hopefully this will work, because I've replaced several chips on this computer just to get the thing stabilised with the SIDE3, so I hope I haven't upset it when the SIDE3 isn't connected. Okay, so that's flashed correctly. We're now back into the firmware menu with the 3.10 firmware, but there's no support for SIDE3 in this version. So we'll just turn on what we need for high-speed SIO support. Right, so now I'm going to boot the system again. And at the other end of the SIO to PC, I've got the latest and greatest firmware. So I'm going to flash that. There we go. Divisor 0, 127 kilobits per second, that's more like it. And we're going to flash the main BIOS. Normally you wouldn't do them in this manner, one at a time. It would just be a big firmware blob. Right, so now if we power cycle again, we should come straight back into the setup menu, which we do. So this is version 3.22. I'll probably bump the version number. So the only plugin we've got here is SIDE3, because there's nothing else in the machine that needs a plugin. So we might as well update the SIDE3 cartridge. This is where it's going to get fun. The fun begins. Right, so plugged it in there. Power it up. Go back into the menu. And hopefully, if we now enable the hard disk, save that and press L, it should start up the SIDE3 loader on the cartridge, and it has. Good. So we found flash ID looks correct, so that's we don't proceed unless that is the case. If we get FFFF there, something's wrong. There's probably a ROM in the way. So the current version is 0.19, so we're going to update to version 0.32. This is the loader. So that's done. Reboot, back into the loader, hopefully. There we go. And we can set the clock now, hit enter. Time, must be 1 o'clock by now, not quite. I'm going to push a card in, and there, when we push the card in, there we go. And let's test the cartridge. Let's try Ace of Aces, see if that works. And it does. We'll press the reset button, press reset on the computer, we should go back to the loader. And we do. Very often before this was going straight to the memory test, so I'm quietly hopeful that this fixed it. I'm not too happy about having to put one of my NCR 6502s in this computer just to get it to work though. Well. So there you have it anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that one. I think you'll agree that machine looks absolutely transformed compared to the state it was in when it arrived here from Italy, and I'm sure the owner will really enjoy it when he gets it back, and I hope it gives him many years of pleasure. And with that, I have to thank everybody who has subscribed to the channel in recent weeks, as well as those who've liked videos and shared videos and commented on videos and interacted in any way, shape or form. As I mentioned before, Patreon is open. I've got one person who's signed up. Thank you very much indeed to that person. And if that does continue to take off, of course I will credit the patrons at the end of videos, and that is all very, very much appreciated indeed, as are one-off donations and any kind of support you can spare. That really does encourage me to continue producing videos. I now have an oscilloscope, finally, hurrah, after all these years. So if you need any repairs or upgrades done to your Atari computer, or indeed any kind of retro computer within reason, please get in touch. The contact details are in the description of the video, and we can talk about what you need. And you can contact me via email or on Facebook at Atari8, or you can fill in the form on the website, whichever way suits you best. I'm in the process of revamping the website. I may set up a second website actually, which deals primarily with PC and sort of non-vintage stuff. Haven't really decided yet. There's a lot to do anyway, so please bear with me while I get all this stuff sorted out. But definitely looking to improve the operation here, to expand and diversify, and hopefully stay as busy as possible. So with that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will see you in the next one. So bye bye for now.